Hey, it's Beth. Welcome. Today is the Bringing Back Basic Gray collaboration. This is a collab that I do with my friend Sarah, who's crafting and relaxing here on YouTube. We have found that we have a hoarded stash of basic gray from years ago when basic gray was a paper and embellishment company, and they no longer make paper. And so we have decided that each month we are going to pull some of it out and put it to good use and enjoy it. So I have two sheets here, two 12 by 12 sheets from the Sultry collection, and they are single-sided. And I am going to try and take one of my 6 by 6 no scraps sketches and like make it work cutting wise for a 12 by 12. I know one way that I could easily do it is to go ahead and cut them into 6 by 6 chunks, but I'm going to try and figure out a way that I can, like a different kind of cutting guide that I can cut down quickly the 12 by 12 paper without having to cut it to 6 by 6. So that's my plan today. I'm using sketch set 9. It has 3 different card varieties. It normally uses 2 6 by 6 sheets of pattern paper, so essentially I have the equivalent of 8, and it normally makes 4 cards, so we are going to be making many more than that, but there will be some duplicates. So that is my plan today. I need to find some coordinating cardstock. I do have these Prima flowers that I'm hoping to try and use up as well. The colors kind of coordinate, and probably need some other embellishments and sentiments. So I will gather everything, kind of get a plan together, and then we will work on converting this to a 12 by 12 cutting guide. Okay, so I went old school here, pulled out some graph paper, pencil, eraser, ruler, all the things to help me figure out how I can convert this to a full 12 by 12 sheet. So what I have done is for this one, each 6 by 6 gets like essentially one of card A, one of card B, and one of card C. So what I wanted to do is I wanted to focus on sketch A. Like, I didn't want to have a ton of cards using these little bitty strips because I know they can be tedious, but unfortunately when you're trying to make no scrap cards, you're always going to have little pieces that you have to use. So I wanted to focus on sketch A and make as many as I could out of the 12 by 12 of sketch A, and then fill in the rest of this, free paper with B and C. So I was able to get 5 sketch A's out of one 12 by 12, and then 1 for sketch B and 1 for sketch C. So when I cut down both of my sheets of pattern paper, I will essentially have 10 of sketch A, 2 of B, and 2 of C. So only 14 cards, which I know that's probably an understatement only, but if you think about it, like if I would have made them from 6 by 6, we would have had 8 sheets of 6 by 6. So we would have had 16 cards. So I was shy a couple of cards, but again, it's because the extra cards would have been more of the strips, which I'm okay with minimizing. So this is kind of how, just to kind of give you a glimpse into my creation process for the sketch sets. I always start old school with some graph paper because then it's easier for me to make notes and cut or like erase and draw as I'm cutting to make sure that it's going to work. So it's just kind of easier to do this, and then I put it into the computer, and that's what gives you the convenient PDFs. So also, hint, hint, look for a new 12 by 12 sketch set to be coming out soon, because since I went through this process, it is going to become a sketch set. So, but for now, as I cut down, I'll kind of give you the measurements of the pieces as I'm cutting if you would like to recreate this in the meantime. and I have pulled out some cardstock that I thought worked well with my patterns. So now that we have that chosen and our sketches, like kind of our plan drawn out, I can finally get to the fun part of crafting. To cut down my papers, I'm first going to cut off the branding strip. I am using non-directional patterns for both of my sheets. So I want to start by cutting a 6.5 by 12 inch piece. And then from this piece, I'm going to turn it and cut at 4.5 inches, and then again at 4.5 inches. And then I'm going to cut these in half at 3.25. And so that gives me my 3.25 by 4.5 inch pieces. Then from that strip that's left at the bottom, I'm going to cut a 2 3/4 inch square. And then that was an extra piece. I'm going to do this one at a diagonal. And then this last bit that's left, I'm going to cut off. I'm going to cut it at 3.25 inches, and that gives me a little extra scrap. And then I'm going to cut 4 3/4 inch strips. Then from our 5.5 by 12 inch strip, I'm going to cut down 2 3/4 and then cut that in half at 2 3/4. Then do another 2 3/4 and cut that in half. So that gives me the 4 squares. Then to cut my diagonal pieces, I'm just lining up the corners of the square on my trimmer channel there, and then putting my blade in the center and then going up and down just so it doesn't bend up those corners. Then from this bottom piece, I'm going to cut 3 1/4 and then by a 4.5. And then from that bottom strip, I'm going to cut 2 1/2 inch strips, and then we'll have a little bit of extra. And then this last piece, I'm going to cut in half at 3 1/4 inches, and then I'm going to end up with 6 3/4 inch strips. So this is a lot of measurements, and I'm sorry. The easiest way to do this sketch on 12 by 12, the sketch set on 12 by 12, is simply to cut down your papers into 4 6-inch pieces and then use the cutting guides. But if you're following along, you can slow it down and try and get the measurements, and there will be a sketch set coming soon. But like I said, that wasn't my original plan when I started this video, but since I did the measurements, there will be a sketch set for it coming in the future. So it's and a lot of measurements, but both sheets are cut down the same way. And so again, if you're cutting at your pieces, your 12 by 12 down into 6-inch pieces, then you will have 8 6-inch pieces that you will cut down exactly the same, and then you have the patterns to mix and match. I will have sketch set 9 linked in the description box below for you as well. It is free to download. All of the sketch sets listed on my sketches and templates page are free. I have just shy of 20 sketches that range, from 6 by 6 to 12 by 12. So we'll finish cutting the rest of this second pattern down. And I'm just piling the pieces, like the pieces together, both patterns, just so it can kind of help me stay organized. And I will have Sarah's channel linked in the description box below for you as well, so you can see her basic gray projects. Now that I have everything cut down, I'm going to go ahead and assemble. So I have a 4 1/4 by 5.5 inch card base, and then I did do some cardstock mats that are all 4 1/8 by 5 3/8. And then we'll add my mat to the card base. And then on this one, it's fun to mix and match the patterns. I have single-sided paper. If you have double-sided paper, you can get an even bigger variety of cards. I will have 2 styles. And so I used the white background floral for the triangle corner pieces, and then the brown paisley pattern is going to be my larger piece. You could also add a card mat behind that large rectangle. That would look sharp as well. So my sketch set does not have a cutting guide for cardstock. This is totally optional. Also, all of these sketches would work really well as 5x7 cards if you bring in some cardstock matting to go behind them. So I will add this down and then I can start embellishing. I'm going to use some of these felt flower embellishments, and I will end up backing them. Like, I don't like them by themselves on these cards, so I just use some white cardstock and a 2 1/4 inch scallop circle punch, and then a 2-inch punch to cut the cardstock circle, like the regular circle that goes in between the scallop circle and the flower. And then I have these thanks sentiments that were already stamped in my stash, and I'm going to go ahead and back them with some of the scrap cardstock. I do one in green and one with pink. And I'm not even measuring, I'm just using my sentiment piece as kind of my guide and cutting a little bit extra for a matte border. Then I can go ahead and adhere these down. And if you wanted, you could use a circle sentiment in place of the embellishment, and then just add a strip or, some type of embellishment underneath there. Or, leave that strip at the bottom off. It's up to you. And because these flowers are felt on the back, well, they're felt, so the back side is also felt. I need to put something heavy on it to help it adhere. So just usually use what's handy on my table or my desk, and this time it was the punch, the scallop punch. And I let that sit for a while, like while I'm working on the other card, and then switch over that punch to rest on this one. And then I do let it sit for a while. And so that is sketch A. I forgot to show you the sketch in the beginning because I wasn't working off of my PDF. Sketch B uses 6 of these 3/4 inch wide strips. You can do all of the same strip, or you can mix and match. So whichever version you do on the first card of sketch B, you're going to have the same mix on the second one. It's either going to be mixed or all the same. So on this one, I decided to mix and match the patterns, kind of alternate them, and then I'm kind of dry fitting the pieces to line them up. And then I do bring in my T-square once I get this first strip down to help me, because I'm going to jump over to the right-hand side to kind of get my outer pieces down, and then can space out the inner pieces from there. And once I got my T-square out, I realized this was just a hair crooked, so decided to try and fix that, and then have to re-glue a little bit at the top. And then for some reason my T-square was giving me some fits, trying to keep it in place. So once I get this one down and lined up, I am going to not use the T-square anymore and just line these up, line the strips up with the ones next to it. So again, just kind of making sure I get my spacing right, and then can go ahead and glue all of these down. I have before used a white cardstock mat behind my pieces, so that is an option. But this time I just decided to go ahead and glue them directly down because you wouldn't see a ton of the white. And since one of my patterns is white. Now that I have all those down, I can go ahead and add this to my card base, and then we can start embellishing. So this time I'm going to bring in a circle sentiment that says, "Thank you so much." And then I'm going to use some of my scrap cardstock to add the strip that comes out from behind the circle. I'm going to add a fishtail to the end of that. And then we'll kind of slide that in behind my circle sentiment and then add my sentiment down. So I may decide to add something to this later on, but I wasn't quite sure what I wanted to do with it yet at this point, so I just kind of left it. And then for sketch C, this time I'm going to use all of the same pattern strips. So this one uses 2 of the 1/2 inch strips that are going to go vertical on the sides, and then 4 of the 3/4 inch strips that go horizontal down the middle. So I tried with alternating, you know, like using both of the patterns, and then decided that I wanted to just do one pattern on this one. So I like to start by putting my vertical strips down first and kind of get my spacing so that there's an even border on the top, outer side, and bottom, and then use that same kind of guide for the other side. And then I do use one of the horizontal strips just to kind of help me make sure that I am lined up. And then the horizontal strips, I just make sure that there's even spacing in between the horizontal strip and both of the vertical strips. I usually start with the top and bottom and then work my way inside to kind of gauge spacing. So once this is glued down, I can add this mat to the card base as well. And then for this one, I am going to be using, it's a thank you sentiment, and it's actually a printable that I had bought for one of my girls had a Moana birthday party like years and years ago, and I had a few of these thank yous left from their like goodie bags and thank you cards, and so I thought, well, it actually kind of coordinates with these colors, so I'm going to go ahead and use these up. So it's about 2 inches, so I use that 2 1/4 inch scallop again. Here are the 10 cards I made with sketch A. That's the one you saw me make, and then I did do the other 4 in this pattern. Used up the K & Company kind of felt flowers and then brought in some other flowers from my stash. And then this is the pink version, and then the other 4 of these. Did a kind of horizontal layout on this one to use this die cut thank you that I had received in a swap, and then used another one of those Moana thank yous, and then a flower from my stash. And then that was sketch A. Sketch B, this is the one that I did with you, and then this was the other version that I did, kind of staggered the strips, so if you don't necessarily trust yourself to line them up, you can always stagger them. And then this was sketch C that I did with you, and then the other version of sketch C. And I did postcards. These are going to be thank yous, like I said, for my online orders. And so on the back side, I did use up the pattern paper scraps that we had left that were kind of like the extra cuts. And then I also used some of the cardstock scraps that I had, so they all do have something on the back side as well. So hope you guys kind of enjoyed. This was a little bit different type of basic gray video that I do. Maybe enjoyed seeing the process of converting a 6x6 sketch to a 12x12 to make it work without having to do extra cuts, and to maximize like the sketches with the bigger pieces of paper. Be sure to check out Sarah's link in the description box below to go to her channel and see what kind of basic gray project she did this month. I thank you guys so very much for your time and hope you all have a very crafty day.